Hey everyone, Margarita here. I'm going to film this video a little more in depth on what all happened to me early this morning. And it is due to the wildfires outside. I was very well aware that these are extremely risky for me, and I already previously had died and came back from the wildfires almost exactly 2 years ago. So 1 week from today would be exactly 2 years ago, which happened to me at Walmart. That video is already up under the near-death experience section on my playlist. There is 3 of them, and it is the 3rd video. Although it does make more sense to watch all 3 in order to better understand what's been going on with me. So from the time of my initial injury, when my brain exploded internally in January of 2018, I was dead in my bed for 4 hours. I came back without medical intervention. The initial injury was caused by carbon monoxide poisoning, which then went untreated. And it went untreated for well over a year prior to me finding the private center at Oxford Recovery Centers where we started treating, because it began at 30 weeks during my pregnancy with my youngest child, and I gave birth while suffering from it. It just got covered up. So once I figured out what all happened, I eventually worked my way backwards, figured out everything that had happened, figured out my young son was suffering from the same thing I was, and then found the treatment center, began getting us treatment, where in the end we ended up spending $165,000 out of pocket to get us to where we are today. Initially, we were left untreated within the traditional medical system for numerous reasons. Not only did the hospital I gave birth at cover this up, which was Hutzel Women's Hospital in Detroit, so I also released some videos on that under the Detroit Hospital Human Trafficking section of my playlist. But separately, once I became completely overloaded with the carbon monoxide almost 2 years later, seeking treatment within Beaumont became a problem because of my mother having Munchausen by proxy and being a 45-year employee there. That's where the falsification of my medical records began. Prior to all of this, I had no medical history my entire adult life. Did not even have a primary doctor, only had a chiropractor. So going forward, every time treatment was sought, I was left untreated within the hospital system. And when this incident happened to me 2 years ago, I was also brought back to the hospital by ambulance, and I was completely out of it, not with it at all. Came too long enough in the ambulance to tell them what the problem was and that I needed oxygen, which they did give me. But when I came to in the hospital and finally got to talk to somebody, they can't comprehend anything that I'm saying because of the falsification of my medical records and what they see when they read those records. They also refuse to reach out to anyone from my actual care team anytime I'm brought back there, because I've been brought back numerous times in an urgent situation. It does not matter when I'm trying to explain that I had a very extreme medical emergency back in 2018. And I'm still treating that initial injury on an outpatient basis when this is not an outpatient type of injury. And I remained homebound for over 3 years completely, only going to treatment and back, which I could barely even get to. The people at the hospital don't understand anything that I'm saying, and they can't comprehend that somebody could be that injured or that sick and not already be at a hospital, or be that fragile and be suffering from the initial effects day in and day out from that initial injury all those years ago. That really is my case. And the only reason we're alive is because of my own merits and my life's work. Because I understood what happened from the minute it happened, and once everything came out about what caused it, I understood exactly what happened because I felt it happen. I lived through it to talk about it. My entire system stayed overloaded with carbon monoxide in every cell because my brain tissue broke all the way through. On the near-death experience video number 2, once you view all of that, you'll understand this better. Once that happened, I remained overloaded with carbon monoxide in my entire body, and it remained flowing up and down every cell of my body for about 2 years. No, it was about 3 years, 2 to 3 years, where it remained heavily flowing up and down my body every minute of every day. I lived with 50, 60, 70 severe symptoms at once, with continuous brain swelling, brain sagging, and extreme nausea waves, all types of very extreme symptoms, without relief from any of them that entire time. So when I go to the hospital, when I'm brought back to the hospital, anytime something happens to me, They still believe the false information that was entered by some employees, directed by my mother when she was still working in the medical system when my injury became extreme initially in 2018. They still see that information. They operate on it. It's all false. And then they believe that nothing ever happened to me, especially when I'm sitting here trying to tell them what's going on in the current is because of the ongoing effects of my initial injury. And the fact that I'm still treating that initial injury daily and have been for some years, they don't want to believe somebody's ever that injured and is actually at home treating this on an outpatient basis. But because of my life's work and what I had built everything to prior to the injury, that's what allowed me to be able to accommodate this in an attempt to get us to a place where we could have some quality of life, because for several years we literally had zero. No one is understanding that either. So when I'm brought back to the hospital, they continue to ride on the delusions. They don't listen to anything I'm saying. It's a whole system of tests so they can tell you what's wrong, not comprehending that the patient actually knows what's wrong, and this is way more extreme than that. And it's not about finding the problem, because I already know what the problem is. I've known all along. It's a matter of understanding where I'm at with this situation and moving forward from that point. But nobody wants to listen to what I'm saying, because everybody that's working in the medical system, at least in the area I live in, they're all ignorant. And so they can't comprehend anything that I'm saying, and I'm always immediately dismissed from the hospital. They write more false information, writing on the initial false information, stating I'm just crazy, nothing's wrong with me, and they send me on my way, even though I was just dead the hour prior to that. So every time something happens to me and I'm brought back, that's what happens to me. So most of the time, if I'm coherent enough, or if somebody else finds me and calls an ambulance, I choose not to go, because I understand what the problem is and most likely what the cause was and how to move forward from there. And when I'm brought back to the hospital, at no time are they giving me anything that's going to help me, and they're not comprehending what's actually going on in the state that I've been living in all of this time without proper help. The other thing is, I cannot have radiation due to all of my cells being overloaded with carbon monoxide, especially my brain. Any small amount of radiation, one x-ray, one scan of any kind, any little bit of radiation, including a smart meter on a home. I do not have a smart meter on my home. I haven't since the injury occurred. I had it taken off immediately in 2018. That amount at that time was enough to cause extreme symptoms, extreme suffering, on top of the extreme suffering I was already in. We had it removed immediately. I don't need somebody to tell me what the problem is and where it's coming from, because my injury is that extreme. I felt my brain explode internally initially. Now, when that happened, it overloaded all my cells. So when radiation is added to that any little bit, it burns all of my cells, adds to the already existing carbon monoxide, whether it be in my arms, my legs, my brain, it doesn't matter. There's more of it loaded in my brain than the rest of my system. But either way, one scan causes extreme suffering. It burns my cells to an extreme degree. And it would take, see, this is a little different now because the center is closed, but let's say the center was still open, it would take at least $5,000 in out-of-pocket treatments to reverse that one x-ray or that one little dose of radiation from my system to get me back to where I was prior to that. It's not going to just go away by itself. Now, today I've been treating with my soft home hyperbaric chamber. It's a little different, has less pressure. I own it outright, so it would just probably take a longer period of time to clear the injury from the radiation. So when I'm brought back to the hospital and I'm trying to explain that I can't have radiation, nobody there wants to comprehend that, because they're also not comprehending the initial injury from 2018 and what caused all that to be the case and where I am today. So what happened was 2 years ago, that all happened to me. I was kicked right out onto the street about an hour after being brought to the hospital and received no help whatsoever. Looking back on it, with what my son has said to me, because he was there with me, and what the people in the aisle were saying, and the Walmart managers, and what all happened with the people who were actually standing there when all this happened, because I really didn't fully understand it. I didn't have all of the information. Even though I tried to gather some of this information down the line, I could not find anything. It appears as if what had killed me was I had a stroke while standing, but it was from the wildfires 2 years ago. And I had spent too much time out driving around in them. And when that happened, I then hit the floor and cracked my head open, causing me to die at that point. But then 15 minutes in, I came back on my own without medical intervention after the EMTs were there, after everybody was standing there. But I was so not with it that I agreed to get on the stretcher and go in the ambulance, knowing, I was trying to say I was okay, even though I wasn't. I knew that they weren't going to treat me at the hospital. That's why I was trying to say that in that moment. And I was correct. That is exactly how it ended. So going into this batch of wildfires recently, I was well aware that this is a possibility. This is the situation. This is how fragile my system and my brain is still to this day. I can feel exactly where it is open from the initial injury, because my entire brain had exploded internally, and it took years of daily treatment to heal from the back up and from the sides up. Now at this point, because there's been so many re-injuries from here all the way into the front, this part of my blood-brain barrier is still open due to the amount of re-injuries that I've suffered from and other people's ignorance. And there is other people involved in causing that to happen to me. I was a little more ahead of that at one point. But that part is still open. I can feel every part of it that's open, and I know exactly where it is. I can feel it. I felt it all along the way from the day my brain initially exploded in 2018. I felt it heal in the manner in which it did. So going forward from there, all particles enter my system upon every breath. If I eat or drink the wrong thing, same concept, it goes right through. This goes for many things because it can soak through the skin, it could be injected, it could be breathed in. There's many ways that can get in your system. But with what's happened to me, because my injury was so extreme, people don't generally live through what I went through to talk about it for somebody to be in that state going forward and be living. So I live that way with the front part of my brain tissue open, so I can feel when the particles go in. I've been aware since this round of wildfires that that is the case, that is what's going on. I did go a few places the last several days, and what happened was I did not use my home hyperbaric chamber upon returning, which I should have done. So I skipped a few days, and then I did get in the chamber late last night, and then I ended up falling asleep about an hour or two after that. Now, usually when I use the chamber, what happens is the particles come out in reverse, regardless if it's new particles entering my system or if it's the initial overload that I'm still removing. What happens is they get knocked loose and then they begin to process, and usually they begin to process the next day. It's all delayed. But when I've taken in quite a bit of particles or had a significant exposure, after I treat, about an hour to 2 hours later, it does start coming out very heavily in reverse. I do end up usually having a severe headache or brain swelling, or I can feel the particles moving throughout my body, getting knocked loose, starting to flow. And that's always been the case with my situation all along the way. So this is not the first time. This is not new to me. After I treated last night, that did begin to happen, but then I fell asleep because I was so tired and it was so late that I actually woke up around 3:30 in the morning, and I woke up to a sudden, sharp, zapping feeling in my brain, which was actually me having a stroke, and my brain popped up top where it's open, up here, because I can feel exactly where the line cuts off. You can actually see where my hair is shorter. Where my hair is shorter right here, all the way around up here. It's shorter for a reason, so I'll talk about that in a minute. But this is where the line stops. I felt it zap through. I felt it break. It woke me up. It was very extreme. And because I've been through this so many times, and I already know I'm not going to get help within the medical system, and they can't comprehend the way I've been living. Nobody can. It doesn't matter who I'm talking to. Nobody can comprehend anything I'm saying. I chose not to do anything. And not only that, but I was extremely exhausted, and I continued to sleep through it. Just made sure that I pushed myself more onto the couch so I wouldn't fall off. And what I've been doing the last couple days, because the wildfires are so heavy, the particle level is so high, I've been sleeping on the main level and not upstairs in my room, because there's more oxygen downstairs than there is upstairs when it comes to something that significant. So I've been downstairs for a few days sleeping on the couch, and I also have an air scrubber in my home, and I have the window shut with the air on. I'm already aware that that has to be my situation. So I didn't really realize how significant it was until I woke up later this morning, and I actually slept way longer than I normally would. I was extremely exhausted, and I slept even longer than I have in a long time. At some point, I did get up and use the bathroom, and I walked through the bathroom and came back and went right back to the couch and went to sleep like normal, as if nothing had happened. But when I fully woke up this morning, I then realized what actually had happened. Because it hurt extra bad. I wake up in pain in my brain every day. It never goes away from the day of the initial injury. It's just not as extreme as it once was. So it was more extreme this morning. It felt slightly different. It felt as if something had burst up top in the front part of my head. And then I was also extremely exhausted with my arms very heavy. So I was only up for about an hour, and I did a few things, and then I got extremely exhausted all over again and fell back asleep for another hour, and then woke up. So upon waking up and then realizing everything that had actually happened over the course of the time I was sleeping and what was actually going on, I then realized that I technically had a stroke. But with me, there would be no point in going to the hospital. Nobody's going to help me. If I call 911, where I live in Flat Rock, with all of the delusion placing at the police department and at the city by my mother regarding me, I'm still not going to receive proper help. It doesn't matter. All they would do is call me an ambulance and bring me to the hospital, where I would then not receive any treatment, and nobody would be listening to anything I'm saying. As soon as I say I can't have radiation, I get kicked out. They don't want to believe that that's somebody's situation. So it doesn't matter. I'm used to living this way. This has been my situation for over 7 years now. I'm very well aware of how my system works, how my brain works, what my condition is, all the different particles, and how my brain tissue is open, and how I can't take in particles of any kind. It does go right through. I've been very well aware of that all along since the day of the injury. So that is why we have to live modified lives. We can't just go out and about in the world like regular people. We can't just go places like regular people. And not only that, I'm not always okay to do so. My son is more okay to do so. He hasn't been re-injured as many times as I. But I'm not always okay to do so anyway. But that is the reason we do live modified lives, because his system, his brain is just as fragile, because his brain tissue broke through during labor and delivery, which I figured out backwards once I was poisoned in 2018. So by then he was about 2. Now, all of this did happen to me, but at the time that this all became very extreme all those years ago, the people around me continued to go on with their lives as if none of that ever occurred, as if nothing ever happened to me and I'm just crazy. So because my mother was repeating delusions to my dad at that time period, and my dad was bringing my 2 older kids back to his house, where my mother was then repeating more delusions, everybody was coming over to my house screaming delusions, coming back to my home screaming delusions while all of this was going on, and I could barely string sentences together. Everybody continued to act like I didn't need medical treatment, acted like I wasn't in a medical emergency, acting like I wasn't in extreme physical distress or extreme pain and suffering. Everybody continued on as if that was not my situation. That went on for some years. And at some point, at the beginning of 2020, is when I brought Charmaine in to begin documenting all of the ongoing crimes, and to begin to show her how those around me are acting as if there was never any injury. So she then witnessed all of this happen long term as well. Because to this day, those around me don't acknowledge that that's actually my situation still to this day. The only one who acknowledges this is my youngest son, who's injured with me. There is no problem with him. But initially I was so injured, my brain was so injured, I could not scream, and I was being forced to scream because of the extreme nature of what was going on. And that then in turn made it so I could not recover. My brain could not heal. I was getting no rest, no recovery, and no proper treatment for quite some time. And even when I began proper treatment, it was still not proper treatment, because this is an inpatient injury, not an outpatient situation, which I was treating it as. So where I am today with all of this, upon waking up, upon figuring out what had actually happened, and because I can feel it. I can feel that there was actually a blood vessel that broke. You can feel it. It feels exactly like that. It's right here. And there is some lingering effects on the sides, and that's exactly what it feels like. And all of the symptoms I experienced all morning are that of a stroke. But because I'm so used to this and living this way, this is actually one of the more minor re-injuries and situations that have come out of this along the way. This isn't as urgent as some of the other situations that have happened to me. But I was aware that the wildfires were a problem. I made the mistake of not using the chamber each day that I did go out and about. Even though I did not go far and I had my windows rolled up, it still comes through the ventilation system of the car, which I already knew. So I made the mistake of not getting in the chamber each day. I should have done it each day and not break from it whatsoever, is what should have happened. So that would have most likely prevented what happened this morning. Now, there's way more to this than just the physical aspect. Part of the physical aspect is it seems that I'm immortal. It seems that all the incidences that have happened to me, all these crazy situations along the way in the past 9 years or so, because this has been going on my whole life, but even more so the past 9 to 10 years since I've been pregnant with my youngest, it became very, very heightened. It's seeming to be that I am actually immortal, and when I die, I'm brought right back. So I'm not really sure if that's what happened to me this morning at any point, because we were both sleeping through the whole thing. I'm not really sure. But each time that happens to me, or it's a very close call, I'm brought right back. Or maybe not right back, but I'm brought back without medical intervention every single time. So quite some time ago, I've come to the conclusion that I'm here for a way bigger purpose. You can watch my 144,000 Chosen Ones video where I talk about all of that and what I'm here to do. I eventually along the way figured out what I was here to do, what I'm here for, why this keeps happening to me, because I'm not meant to die. The other thing is I've been under many different sets of spiritual attacks along the way. And one of my biggest enemies and one of the people causing the most harm to me spiritually is my own mother. She has been swirling dark thoughts about me, spreading delusions, flapping her jaw, which is basically just like spell work. When you're talking bad about somebody, and especially when none of that's real, and you're repeating it over and over again to all these people, that's an equivalent to spell work. Now, what I've been discovering along the way is she might actually be doing spell work or have a practitioner that she goes to. There's numerous reasons I believe this, and I'll get more into that in future videos, because there is a whole spiritual aspect and a whole playlist that I'm gonna talk about under the spirituality section on my playlist along the way. Because right before I died and came back the first time, I did have a black-eyed kids experience, which ties in with all this as well. I've not released that video yet, but I will. And I'm going to get to talking about more into the spirituality aspect of everything I've been through. Because my mother has been targeting me spiritually my entire life, even more so heavily once I became pregnant with my youngest child, which I believe is a contributing factor to all of these near-death experiences and all these times I have died and came back, and all of these severe situations that keep happening to me along the way. Now, yes, she's Catholic. Yes, she attends a Catholic church. That does not mean anything. People like her use the Catholic Church to hide behind, to carry out their malicious agenda. And you can tell by looking at her eyes, there is a spiritual problem. There is no color left in her eyes, because she used to have color in her eyes. There has not been for some years, and her eyes are all black. I'm not even sure if she's aware of that. But running in the background at the same time all this is going on, I am working numerous angles on getting her apprehended, and the top tier level of individuals apprehended for her crimes long term. And I believe that's playing a role in what's going on spiritually. And if she has gone to a practitioner, if she is actually using spell work, or if she's just swirling dark thoughts or flapping her jaw, either way, it's a mix of those or one of those. So that is part of what's going on. And in some of my actions that I have running in the background are contributing to why she is, there's like a heightened peak with what she's doing regarding all of that in the current. I've been aware of that for the past week or so. So I do believe that that is part of the reason that happened to me this morning, not just the wildfires. Yes, that is a physical thing going on, but there is a huge spiritual aspect to what I've been dealing with all along the way, all throughout the course of my life, and in the current still. So I'm going to talk way more about the spirituality aspect. I have quite a bit of information. This is not stuff people normally think about or look into unless you would have reason to begin to look into something that deep regarding that type of thing. Because I never thought about it my entire life until maybe 5 years ago or so. That's when I really started figuring out there's something more going on here. 5 to 6 years ago, I really started figuring it out. But that is what's going on with her. I know that she's either flapping her jaw, swirling dark thoughts, or she very well could be participating in some actual black magic. And I know some people that go to church, or some people who don't, and they just don't believe that that's real. It doesn't matter if you don't believe that that's real. There are people that do, and there are people that practice that type of thing. Regardless if you believe it or not, there are people who do. And so that's what prompted me to begin looking into this initially, once I was near death, once I didn't know if I was ever going to come out of it, and how somebody could have so many catastrophic events back to back to back and never come out of it, and just be in an extreme state of suffering to that degree, day in and day out for years. That's what caused me to uncover all of that. She is at the root of all of that. So that is going on in the current. I do believe that played a role in what happened to me this morning. Going forward, no, I'm not going to go be seen at the hospital or anywhere else. All I did was notify a couple of people, and there's really nothing I can do, because all of the answers and what I need to heal my physical body, I actually have inside of my home, which is where I'm forced to shelter in place at the moment. So there would be no reason for me to be going to any facility arguing with any of these low-level idiots who cannot comprehend what has happened to me and what has gone on in the past 7.5 years and where I'm at with it today. I don't have time to do that. I don't have the energy to do that. So yes, my brain is very fragile. I don't know how many videos I'm going to be able to film at this point due to this, although I do have some pre-recorded videos. It's just that my brain's going to be more fragile going forward for some time, and I'm just going to have to make sure I use my hyperbaric chamber. Given I do travel from point A to point B, it's going to have to be used immediately upon returning. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it. Others don't want to comprehend my reality. It's very hard for anybody to comprehend anything I've been through, and I'm now coming to the conclusion that I'm immortal. Which I've already kind of been coming to that conclusion, but the more times this all keeps happening to me, it's just another notch on the belt for me to realize and validate that is my situation. To me, this is normal. I've been getting used to it for some time, and even to my younger son, this is normal to him as well, because he has now seen me die and come back numerous times, and has seen me get forcibly dragged from my home and arrested by the Flat Rock police more than once. And this is all very abnormal. This is not normal human behavior. So to him, he has a very different life and a very different view of what is normal and what's going on in the world. Because he is quite used to all of this, and he knows how to handle these matters when they do occur, whereas most kids his age would not. And he is not just 9 years old, his soul is like 85 years old. So he definitely has a way bigger view. But yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about. And that's why I was making the videos and warning people about the wildfires and to be careful and to stay indoors, because I was already aware from 2 years ago what had happened to me regarding that. That's why I was posting everything and made the video about it. And 2 days ago, I did see there was an ambulance across the street at the older people across the street, their house. And usually when there's a spill, a flush, or wildfires going on, there usually is an ambulance over there. So that's clue number one, that I need to be extra careful. If I see an ambulance there first, then most likely I'm probably next, which has been the case numerous times. So yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about. I'm probably not going to film any more videos today because this one's already a half hour and it's making me really tired. So I'm probably just going to sleep the rest of the day, and I'll try to come back tomorrow and do another one and get back to the schedule of planned videos. I had several topics already planned to be filmed, so I will get back to that tomorrow and try to begin releasing again tomorrow on that. Thanks, bye.